Hi everybody, I'm here with Anthony Thompson. I have kind of met this beautiful being only 2 nights ago. I had seen you on videos and I was very touched by one of the videos where you share a lot about emerging leadership in 2018. And so I was like, oh, this is an inspiring being. I want to interview this guy. And here we are. So maybe you can introduce yourself for people who don't know you yet. What are you here for on this beautiful planet? Who are you?
I haven't had to interview myself as something for a while. I would say that which comes through me now is an ambassador or a visionary or a representation for our fifth dimensional civilization, or our awakened civilization that is service to all orientated. And my whole life now is one with that intention, one with that mission, which I firmly believe is a collective intention, that intention is what binds so many of us here on this planet at this time for the complete upgrade of our civilization. And my life has been a humbling process of preparing to actually be able to fulfill the unique role that I'm here for.
Right. And that is what I have experienced the last 2 days of having contact with you and being around this beautiful emerging community here in Amsterdam. The speed with things go, how do you say, the speed with how things go here is so fast. It's amazing.
It is like that now.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. Is there anything that you can share about that? Like, how is that? How did it arise? Yeah.
So I'd say what she's pointing to is this seeming profound intensity of creating and manifesting and moving and holding people in that which I would say really has just come on at this speed over the last particularly like 3 weeks. But I mean, even just touching down in Amsterdam, I didn't know how things were going to look. And in the last week, the amount that has been created and established, set up, people that have come in, and the more that's coming is like 10 levels beyond anything I've ever operated at.
Yeah.
And I've created things before and set intentions and projects and visions forth, but this is just coming from another place. And the reason that it's coming at a speed and such a balance, it's not like this hard work, we're going all day, but there's zero hard work, is because of the alignment I found within myself that I don't sit down and create anymore. I am in alignment for creation to come through and happen. So I'm in a space where I'm open enough of a channel for my own highest mind to be one with me, and I don't need to conjure up the thoughts. They come in, so from creation, and then to putting into action my being, it doesn't have resistance or fear to sit up so much about not taking the action or not putting things forth. And then because I'm such a clear space, one with that calling, the manifestations come in to support that intention coming through. So because it's coming from here, from such a clear place, into a clear place to hold that vision, then I manifest the people to support that, right? Which is, having Matthias here is like the ultimate of that. I mean, the brother who I'm creating with is like one of the closest beings to me now, and he wasn't even meant to be here in Amsterdam. We sat down 2 days before coming here in LA, and he had plans to go to Costa Rica. And I said, if I paid for your flight to come to Amsterdam, I'd really like you to be there. I know, I want you to be a part of this with me. And none of this would have been able to happen without him. Like these ideas would have been stuck, right? So yeah, all to do with the alignment and my own readiness.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful. So, considering that readiness, what was your process before this? I can imagine that it's not, there was something before.
I mean, I feel like everything up until now has been preparation. I mean, even when it looked like I was doing things before, or I was traveling the world, or I was on my spiritual journey or I was in my relationships. Everything was preparing and learning and supporting this process. So, I mean, for me, it's really been a pretty accelerated last few years of so many different colors and flavors, from like the world of psychology and will-based learning and personal development into, you know, the traditional, you know, Buddhist teachings and things like that of just allowing and letting go, into letting go of that and the more attract your reality through vibration only and follow your highest desires in every moment and following that path to the T, and then getting that whole train stopped, which was intense. And then went through this process of, I mean, the last thing that really allowed this to come through was I went through a really full process of surrender, which was, I saw that I didn't need to have control of my life anymore for the highest to manifest. And so I went through a process over a number of months of just giving up any control of how I felt or what I did or who I thought I needed to be. Because I saw this image, right, which was that, you imagine this prism, right? Mm-hmm. You can beam a light into a prism and that will fractal out all of these beautiful colors, right? And I saw that that's our natural space. We're each this different prism and each beams the light out in a different way.
Yeah.
And if you put some fog in there or you scratch that a little bit, the same light is coming in, this infinite light, but it'll just come out a bit foggy and less clear and less precise. And so giving up all of the control was just giving up anything in that prism that didn't need to be there, because the light is always coming in 100% to all things, right? And so it was a process of surrender where, to the point of, I didn't need to control my life anymore. I surrendered that. I said, I will just surrender to the highest that wants to happen. And, you know, one day it was just, vision started coming in. It was literally like my own higher intelligence was just like shaping me into this role, this leader, you know. It was able to do what I do now, but it was because I gave up the control of it. So it was just so effortlessly able to happen. That's what I think. And for me, a continual process of humility and allowing. I mean, life provides all the opportunities, the invitations for us to align with our, you know, highest truth that we're here to bring forth. And it requires a lot of humility. I mean, the mind, the ego is so subtle. You know, you can't even see it even when you're in a very advanced place because it's so subtle, you know. And for me, humility helped me to really go through a lot of the things that I allow myself to go through.
Oh. You had the other day you described a situation where you fell asleep. Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah. So the way I see it is that, you know, we're here to bring through a completely different, we're here to represent something on the planet that hasn't been represented before. And I see the spiritual journey, I see spirituality as a technology that has been on this planet for thousands of years. And that technology serves one purpose, which is to upgrade the operating system, mind or consciousness, to another frequency. That's its only purpose. You can put all the teachings and tools and techniques and books inside of that purpose that humanity has been trying to evolve for a long time. And spirituality is a bridge into completely one with the frequency of what Earth is becoming, which I call fifth dimensional, which is just you're unplugged from that which keeps you anchored in the beliefs of separation and limitation, which is these dense fear-based and separation-based paradigms, right? So a lot of us that go through these spiritual journeys and awaken our mind and our consciousness and even a lot of our cells to these higher understandings, there's still the sense of fear that continues to come up and not being able to play as big or as openly, as freely as we would if we really did believe we were the one infinite creator. And so that's actually the purpose, I believe, of spirituality, to give a complete shift where you operate 100% from the frequency you're here to bring forth. You're not like half in, half out, scattered, having to work yourself into vibrational alignment every day. I don't think that's natural. That this is actually a resting place of harmony, of alignment, of freedom, of letting creativity flow through.
Yeah. And
so, through this surrender, what starts to happen is, your body starts to activate, and it's like, whoa, your energy starts to come online, like, oh, this is how it feels like. And, to go from one operating system, take, for example, on an iPhone, to another, you have to disconnect from this one completely and plug into the other. And there's this gradual process, right, that spirituality allows us to do. We're having these higher experiences, plugging into that, experiencing that here and there, getting ourselves into it, but we don't rest in that. And so I think it was around the 19th of December, I just had the most insane 2 weeks ever. Like life just went to this frequency every day. And then one day it just was like everything just felt empty and meaningless, and my life didn't have purpose, and I didn't even feel my relationship to people. It was just like, everything was just like, And on that day, I had, I think, $20 in my bank account and nowhere to stay the following day. And I was feeling really frustrated that day. And we ended up going back to the house. I think we spent the last money on a pizza that day. And like ultimate surrender, we were just going to keep living fully. And I fell asleep at like 2 o'clock that day. And this frustrated state, and my girlfriend just gave me space. And I woke up, I don't know, I guess it was a few hours later, and I opened my eyes. It's just like this complete, like, not a thought, not a reference point. This day's confusion. I looked up and my girlfriend was there, just like pouring love towards me. And it felt like I'd been in a coma for 2 or 3 weeks. It just felt like I was in a coma for all this time, and I woke up, and there was these, like, it was like having these antennas ripped out of my head. It was like the worst migraine ever. My body was in shivers, and I just stayed in this for hours. So it was like dying. I knew that death was happening. It wasn't a physical death, but I knew death was happening. At some point, I asked a couple of my friends, my close friends, to come into the room, and they came in, and I was just crying because it was like seeing them for the first time again with like these new eyes, and that was, I think, the moment that kind of, I call it a flip of my consciousness, where I became more one with this new frequency that we're actually all moving into right now, and a smaller portion remains in this plane of density and understanding. So I'm still completely relatable and experiencing, but the dominant portion of my consciousness isn't in the matrix anymore. It actually went to the other operating system. And so naturally there's alignments to that and different things that play out and energies that process in my body, but my natural resting place now is just like the things that I would say most people work to get in alignment to. It's just like very natural. So yeah, I wouldn't call that the moment or the time where that more clear shift happened.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. So this question I always ask in the interviews that I do is that if you were to share something towards maybe somebody that's watching that is in a different space, maybe not yet opened up to this idea or this feeling, or like you share the fifth dimension, what is it that you would like to share?
I think since we're in school, I knew for me that I wasn't able to reference it, but just something always felt a little bit off. Something wasn't quite aligned. And looking back on it, that was the seed that was always there. And that seed led me to inquiring. And that seed led me to being open to just things that didn't need reason. things that I couldn't reason, I was open to, and I think that's fine. I think everyone, even whether you're on what people call a spiritual journey or not, you have this like access point to a feeling that goes beyond reason, and that is your access point to your unique truth. That access point feels different for everyone. You know, for some of us, it's just this feeling of like purity or this like vastness, and just allowing ourselves to sit in that, whatever our access point is, opens a door. It truly opens a door. You don't need to understand it if you just trust and just go into that. That is going to navigate you in different ways, and different synchronicities will continue to open up this portal line. I know that's what was the case for me, that there was this seed, there was this opening, and I just continued to allow that to go. I just continued, and I could, even when I was in that surrender of not knowing where my life was going to go or who I was going to be or if I was going to serve the planet or not, there was this undercurrent of like just calling me forth, you know, always calling me forth.
Thank you. So you have been sharing about leadership. Can you share what is leadership in this fifth dimension you were sharing about?
The way I see it, or the way I experience it, especially because leadership wasn't something I chose, it just happens. And some people feel very natural towards leadership, and some people feel resistance because we're self-empowered and self-governing. And at the event the other night, I gave this example that you could give a couple of different ones, but one being, you know, if a tribe is going to go into new lands, they'll send forth a brave member of that tribe to go and explore these terrains that you have to be very brave and bold and prepared for. They might send a few of them. They're a part of the whole collective. They're going to come back, and that entire collective is going to be able to make that transition so much more easily because of it. And that the new leadership that I see as emerging is you are one with your whole collective. We are one collective. And there's all these different roles in that, but it's one collective moving. So in this space, I don't feel myself as an individual. I feel myself as a whole. There is no, to me, personal success or personal enlightenment or personal achievement anymore, because you experience yourself literally as the whole. Your whole energy field is connected to the whole. And so I don't see any separation between any group of people, just natural roles that collective chooses. It feels like it's being asked for from me rather than something I'm choosing. And so I see leadership as gorgeous and important, and I think it's a part of, you know, if you look at even animals, there's birds at the front, there's lions at the front, there's wolves at the front, but they're no different to the collective. They all go to the same place together. They all experience the same journey together. And so to me, leadership is beautiful, and it's the way that it is now. It's a state of complete selflessness, basically. I mean, to do it, you have to be selfless, or especially the people will just pick up on it, and it just won't be true. And that was what was so beautiful, sitting in that room. And I said, I feel you guys allowing me to be what is called forth. And that is the most beautiful thing, because in allowing this natural role to come through me, different reflections have come up from different people that I love. And sometimes it's not always seeing the authenticity of this role, especially when it's very direct and has a very clear focus, you know. You put the role aside, there's just this humble, innocent boy that just wants joy and loving relationships, you know. But in that humility, this is what gets called for. So, you know, I see that for leadership, for sure. And, you know, we're all leaders in our own way. We came here on an intention to actually create a ripple of changing the entire planet. We're all going to be holding space for different beings in different forms. And I think to lead, you have to be receptive to leadership, and you have to see that as just a very natural part of these organisms, of these collective groups.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So my last question is, can you share a little bit about what you're actually doing here,
Mm.
and where people can find you or can become part of this beautiful rising.
I mean, being in Amsterdam is, I see, about igniting a new means of evolution or change or awakening, which is that it forms within community itself. So we're used to growing through an outside influence of teachers or books or even meditation. And I came to Amsterdam because this community here that's growing and it's ready to actually empower and evolve itself from inside without needing anything on the outside, just being together, holding space for one another, empowering one another. This is how we evolve. It's the easiest way, it's the fastest way, and it requires no external influence. Once you get it set up, you can do it for yourself. So the vision I have is that Amsterdam will be the first city on the planet where what I call fifth dimensional consciousness is widely held by a number of beings, and it's a city that incubates and holds people from all over the world to come here. And this community set up in a way that there's housing set up, and there's events set up, and there's amazing beings set up, so that people that are all being pulled into this, I would call it this phase of the journey, where our spiritual journeys have matured us, prepared us for this transition. And there's nothing that can really facilitate it unless a really incredible guru or teacher can consistently give you presence and hold that space for you in that transition. There's no way people can go to get what they need. We're limited to retreats and workshops and books and our own meditation processes. But just being in a field, being held in a field with community is what is going to cause that change. And so that's one of the main things about being an Amsterdam.
Yeah, thank you. Brilliant. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.